everything else. So I'm not saying I have a perfect answer for you today, but I think these things are important on both sides of this thing. We just have to get them right, and we certainly have not got them right for the last couple of decades at least.
So I want to say that, Ramona, thank you very much. We are reading what you have placed into the chat. So your comments and your questions are going to be guidance for us as a housing committee, moving forward. I do want to shift a little bit. And also, I see that Ms. Leader has another question, but I'm going to shift a little bit. We did go community first. I do have a committee. I'm now going to ask if any of our, housing committee members, including Ms. McClure, including Ms. Glover, and Donna Gill, who have worked very diligently on this, and we have also Dominic Boyce, and we also have, Sean Brandon and others. I just want to shift for a moment. We'll get back to you for some other questions. I see Delcinia's hand on, and Delcinia, I want to turn to you next. And then we'll do a little bit, of this committee, since we are learning too, as you are all helping to educate us, and we're very grateful and appreciative for this dialogue and conversation. So, especially you, Mr. Jenkins, and you, Ms. Leader, and others, thank you very much for really this education, and of course, Mr. Baggett. So, Ms. Glover.
Yeah, my question is, so the residents are given an option of PAC-RAD or the Preservation Trust, or to use your phrase, status quo. What happens with the developments that choose to stay status quo? What is the plan for those buildings, for repairs, et cetera?
Yes, this is a great question. And so one thing I want to note is, I think we're on our side trying to get out of the habit of staying the status quo. And
Why
really,
is
it is
everyone on
staying in
mute
Section 9,
except
right?
for
Section
Debster,
9 is
the only
the
person I
program
don't?
remain in if they were to vote that way. And I can talk at length about Section 9 and sort of my feelings about that. And I wish we were not in the spot that we're in on Section 9. I think that program has done an incredible amount of good for this country that other housing programs have certainly not. So if a development has a vote and chooses to remain in Section 9, right, they say we're going to vote against the option of a trust or against PAC-RAD, and remain in Section 9. So the way that repairs work would be the same sort of component level repairs that happen today, which could be an elevator replacement in 1 year, or a boiler down the road, or a roof. It's piecemeal, largely because of funding. I will acknowledge, I think someone mentioned this in the chat too, that we've been historically very slow at committing capital funds also, right? We've not been very quick. We've not been very efficient at doing that. So there are undeniably a million things that might just fix in that process for a site before a vote, for a site that chooses Section 9 on the back end, all those things. But if a site does choose that, it's going to be sort of that component level repair until, and again, I hope one day if we do get full funding on the Section 9 side, then that could change. And you could see more of the sort of comp mod, full repair at one time approach to those sites, which I think we would all prefer.
But just a quick follow-up. So if you take out the percentage of buildings or developments that go PAC-RAD, and then the developments that go into Preservation Trust, what happens with the money, the Section 9 money for NYCHA? Does that mean, to my a limited mathematical understanding, that to me would mean that you should have more money
are there, and that's why I'm here, because I have good mathematical ability. I don't get to be somebody. Okay, let's comment right here. Oh, I cannot actually comment. I have to pay to comment on the live chat, so I'm gonna actually comment here. I don't even know if that would be
what you do with the money.
So the only issue with that, so the way that HUD allocates capital funding is based on the units that are in the program. So NYCHA's not getting an overall capital grant just for being NYCHA. It's based on how many units we have. So as our units do convert to Rad Pact or to the trust and they come off of the Section 9 line, we actually lose that subsidy from that unit. So we're actually losing the Section 9 money as we're gaining the
There's
voucher.
3 people watching.
Like
I'm
as
one of 3
Andrew
people
said,
who's watching.
the voucher is worth more on paper than we're getting right now from Section 9. But we're not going to have all that left over to then spread around to the remaining. So we're still in a spot of having to request and sort of beg for additional allocations to do more work.
Thank you for that, Del Senior, and thank you, Arvin, for responding to that. Brianna, I saw your comment, but I still want to give you an opportunity to really, weigh in. We are going to get to, I see Karen, Leader, and Marquise Jenkins. I believe your hands are still raised, and after you, I'm going to go to Dominic Boyce, and then we're going to go, if there are no other committee members, back to community. So, Brianna?
Oh, yes. Thank you. I was just saying I do have a few questions, but I would like to yield my time to community members, given such limited time. So I'll hold on to those questions if they go unanswered, and I'll raise them later.
Okay. Thank you, Brianna. Dominic Boyce.
Hi, good evening. Just a quick question, because I heard the gentleman mention about efficiency, and I want to know, how is it efficient if in this whole system, you mentioned there are 3 options and everything, and at the end of the day, the votes are different, and so you have sort of like a hodgepodge, a mix of different developments. So how would that be efficient, given what you said and what the proposal has laid out? That's my first question. And the second question is, earlier everyone talked about HUD and the feds and pretty much kicking the can down the road to 2024. And my question regarding that, given the situation, would the political wins, if it changes, affect what agreements are being put in place that underpin what we're discussing in terms of this process with the Section 8 and the development? I'll yield my time to the speaker or the answerer.
Thank you. So the first question was around how is it efficient to have sort of this hodgepodge of programs? The answer is it's not ideal, right? This is not the way that NYCHA was designed. This is not the way we would prefer to be doing things. For 90 years, NYCHA was funded through the Section 9 program with a couple of state and city exceptions, but it was largely a consistent program that got funding and was sort of managed that way. Part of the hodgepodge thing you're seeing is a response to the funding issues, right? So we're sort of now taking on whatever tax we can to try and attract funding to keep the buildings online. And so that's why you feel like, there's developments going through PACT, some through the trust, some staying. It's not a satisfying answer, but it's sort of at this moment, NYCHA needs all the options that it can get to try and raise that money. So that's sort of why it feels a little bit hodgepodge. I will admit, I'll be the first person to admit it's not ideal. This is not the way that anyone would have drawn this up. This is not the way that that anyone would want this to be structured. It's a response to the way the federal rules are written, the way the programs have developed over time. To your second point about the politics, I can't guess what will change at the state level or the federal level. Certainly, I think part of the theory behind the conversions to Section 8 has been, historically, Section 8 has been funded more consistently than Section 9. I can't say that's going to continue. I can't say that may be changing at some point. It's unlikely in this upcoming Congress with the Republican House to see huge support for public housing. I'd love to be surprised, and I hope that I'm wrong. But I don't entirely know what will change politically that may affect us. We're trying to design the thing with what we assume right now.
And to the original question about, how is it more efficient, and it's not, but unfortunately, we don't have trust units right now, but even without the trust, we're still going to have a hodgepodge of units. As about 30 or 40,000 units have already have gone or are going through Rad Pact. So unfortunately, we are in the place of hodgepodge regardless of the trust.
So
Thank you for your
guys.
answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Donna Gill.
Sorry, Charles. I just have a few questions because you threw around a lot of terms about the federal regulation 964, I think it was. I wasn't sure. Section 8, Section 9. Not everyone on here is familiar with all of those terms. So I just wanted a brief description or a brief education on those terms, knowing that people are going to have to vote on this preservation trust. I would appreciate people to have a full understanding of what all of these things mean and how it's going to benefit or not benefit them. Thank you.
Yes. And I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear up top. And I just want to say that to the extent people are going to have to vote, we will do many, many, many more in-depth engagement conversations where we explain it a lot more fully than in the 15 minutes I had at the top of this meeting. So this is definitely not all of the information we are going to provide ahead of a vote. But Section 9 is what you or we commonly think of when we think of public housing. It's the physical housing developments where the land and the buildings are owned by NYCHA and they're managed by NYCHA. Section 8 are vouchers, meaning a private developer normally or a private landlord accepts a voucher from a tenant. The tenant pays a portion of their rent. Pays a portion of their income and rent. The voucher covers the rest. So normally people think of vouchers when they think of Section 8. They can both be vouchers that go with the tenant, meaning if you're the tenant, you have a voucher, you can take it from apartment to apartment. But there are also Section 8 vouchers that run with the unit, meaning the apartment has a voucher. And so anyone who lives there gets the benefit of the voucher. So kind of Section 9 is what we traditionally think of as public housing, and Section 8 is the voucher program that was created a little bit later. And unfortunately, and for different reasons, has been more heavily invested in over the last few decades. So, you know, NYCHA has about 350 public housing residents in Section 9, but we also have about 150,000 residents with Section 8 vouchers that we manage as well.
So thank you for those answers. I'm going to just ask if any other Housing Committee members have questions, as there have been some excellent questions from committee members. And I just want to point out, there are a couple of people, Ramona Ferreira, thank you so much. I'm reading your questions and comments in the chat. You've been great. Marquise, you've been great. You know, this is not the end. This Housing Committee, you know, I've been chair now for almost 7 years. I pride ourselves on, or we pride ourselves on being an information platform. And you guys have done a tremendous job of contributing to at least my edification and knowledge and information regarding this subject, as Arvin and Andra have been. So any other committee members before we go to a few more questions by the community first? Any other questions? So let's go to you, Ms. Leader. I know your hand is still up, and I believe, Marquise, your hand is still up as well, correct? So we're going to go to Karen Leader, and then we're going to go to Marquise Jenkins, and then we may be, and thank you, you know, NYCHA reps, we may be winding down and going to a close, but I do, you know, want to make sure that I'm going to, as chair of this committee, I'm going to review every comment in the chat. I'm going to ask that our committee does the same, not just the experts like Delcinia Glover and Brianna and others, you know, who really, you know, have helped me become more familiar with this subject. We're going to review this and we're going to go through. And I like what Ramona said, and I hope that Arvin and you, Andra, please, and Ramona, I don't know if you put your email in there, but there's some questions that it'll be great for them to hear directly back from you via email to answer those questions. And we will promise, our committee will promise that this will not be the last time that we'll have a conversation on this subject, NYSER Preservation Trust. So, Ms. Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. I wanted to get back with the 20%. I didn't finish that question. Is it safe to say that NYCHA will have a complete list of the names of all leaseholders and those that are 18 years old and older? And will this list be shared with resident council executive board members in that particular development so that we can make sure that this 20% count is accurate? That was my question to my part two of my first question. But I wanted to ask too about RAD Impact. Why is it that the vouchers, which are tied to the unit, why do they bind a resident who?
Okay, right now I'm going to pause the audio for a second because, first of all, there's a lot of things you guys might not be knowing what they're talking about. They're talking about Section 9. They're talking about Section 8. They're talking about vouchers. So I'm going to check the chat right now. Now, I actually, you can always contact me personally. A lot of the stuff that I did want to say, I actually want to say it to this panel. So I dropped it on the comments. Now, they should be able to see this. Yeah? Okay, let me check it again. Okay.
We can make sure that this 20% count is.
Those are great questions. I'm going to answer the second one first because the answer is we agree with you and we are looking into changing that policy and what it would take for us to do on that end. But our goal, I think, as an organization is, especially once the trust units come online, for households to be able to transfer from trust, from Section 9 and from RAD Pact, and not just within the same RAD Pact development. So that is something we are working on. As to your first question, we will have a list of the most up-to-date household compositions, which we will provide to the third-party voting administrator. Again, we're not the ones running the vote. We're not the ones checking to see who's eligible to vote. We're not the ones counting it. We're not the ones certifying it. Unfortunately, due to HUD regulations, we can't share a list of households with names to other residents. That's actually against HUD's regulations because both the apartment number and the names are personal identifying information, and we are not legally allowed to share that. But again, we will not be the ones checking for the validity of the vote anyway. We will not be the ones counting it. That is why we are hiring a third-party vote administrator.
So, Ms. Leader, there'll be more to come from that. That, the integrity of the voting process and the integrity of how inclusiveness. We know that we've been fighting that battle as people nationwide
regulations
to make sure that every vote counts. I'm hearing, that there's the same desire from our representatives from NYCHA. So we're going to shift to you, Mr. Jenkins, and you've been great so far, and you might be our last question for this evening. So make it good.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to ask this question. The Housing Authority put together a pretty aggressive lobbying plan and implemented a pretty aggressive lobbying plan to get the Public Housing Preservation Trust passed into law. Today, we actually just came back from Albany, the residents who preserve public housing, and we heard some really sad news about the Public Housing Authority's ask for funding from the state. In fact, our legislators was wishing that the Housing Authority would be asking for more capital and operating dollars from the state. This year, how much are you asking from the state to provide in the budget for public housing?
Andrew, actually, I don't know. I don't know if you know off the top of your head. But if not, we can get you that answer, Mr. Jenkins.
Sorry, we can get you an answer, but the ask hasn't been made yet because we haven't made the trip to Albany yet. But I'm not sure, and we can get back to you on that.
Do you know what the ask was last year?
Do they have a
I
general
don't.
idea?
I wasn't working for NYCHA last year, unfortunately.
What the fuck are they getting paid
Yeah,
for?
Mr. Jenkins, we can get you all that information though on the last couple years of asks and what's been actually been.
So Arvin and Andrew, do you have Mr. Jenkins' email?
I believe I do.
And we'll be happy to receive that information. I know you have ours. That's an excellent question, Mr. Jenkins. And by the way, we always look forward to representatives from
Yeah.
our
So what if the
our
money gets
particular
sent, yeah?
state, you know,
People
state
can't
folks.
get
I
it
know
before,
they're all
we're
up
gonna
in
see.
Albany.
That's
And
just
that's what I've been
one.
hearing all day long. So that's a great,
Not
great
bad, but
question.
damn.
And prayerfully, let me just do a little advertorial for community boards. I'm hearing a number of folks that I'm hoping that you will take the opportunity to apply and consider being a member of Manhattan Community Board 10. I remember Brianna McClure for a year or two prior to her coming on board with our community board and housing committee. She was always on this call, and there are a number of others. Please, there are a number of you who are, you know, phenomenal, and the information that you're providing to us is so resourceful. I hope you would consider joining our board and being a regular member, but we'll also promise that regardless of whether you do that or not, we want you to come back, and we welcome you into future meetings and future conversations. NYCHA is very, very dear and important to us. That is the majority of affordable housing in our district, in our city, and probably in our country. You know, so we
Actions
really,
speak louder
really
than
look
words.
forward
Yeah,
to
you
it.
say we're a
So
priority, but things not being
because
moved.
of the time, and I think
If it's
that
not
we
good, you're
did,
stepping
we
yourself.
were very intentional. We want to thank Arvin and Andrea for taking the time out
That's
today.
why
I think we've
someone else
achieved
has to
our
be the
objective
person who lives there
for
has to be in
now.
charge.
Not forever, for now. So unless there is anything pertinent or further from Delcenia Glover, Brianna McClure, Donna Gill, or from any other committee member, I would just like to thank everyone for this fantastic conversation, this very educational and informative discussion this evening. And at about 4 minutes to 8, we're gonna probably move to adjourn.
Charles, I just wanted to
So much
thank
control.
everyone as well. I thank the community and the presenters. This was great. I know by far this is not the end. This is only the beginning.
Yes.
I hope we're able to get back with this or get more community involvement. Thanks, Ramona. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Marquise, Lonnie, and all of the people that are on here, and especially Miguel for facilitating this meeting. Thanks, Brianna and Delcinia. Have a good night, everyone.
Anything else from you, Brianna or Delcenia, before we adjourn? And I echo that. Thank you, Miguel, for really helping throughout this meeting.
All right.
Yeah, thank you. You know,
I'm gonna end it right here. I'm gonna check the chat to see if anybody has anything, really. I'm gonna check the chat right now to see if anybody has anything they wanna, say about this. There was a couple comments I made earlier. There was a thing. Okay, where was it? Okay, we're checking the chat right now. Okay, yeah. There was something happened earlier where someone was talking about 20% of the votes. That's actually been an issue, right? So we'll talk about the 20% in a hot moment. But I'm gonna check the chat, see if anybody has any questions about what happened there. Okay. There was probably I'm the only one here. Okay, yeah. Well, if anybody has questions, right? What is going on here? Okay. Oh wow, I didn't even do that. Did I even show the thing for the whole